this live show to just converse with you about the role and the potential of ICT in early childhood education. You know, so I'm going to use a review of New Zealand and the international literature to just discuss about the topic of the day. Before we go further, I would like to ask you, how are you doing? How are you feeling in your place? It's been a long time. This is going to be my first time doing a live show, but I believe you learn something from it. I am teacher Emmanuel. I live in Rwanda, specifically in Kigali City. You can subscribe to my channel, like, share some of my videos. I know there are some videos you can like, especially the ones about ICT. You can let your child watch the video and learn from it. Anyways, let this conversation be very lovely and more important to you. You can just comment in the comment section anything you want, any kind of video you want me to do about ICT, then I'm really ready. If you want your child introduced to ICT, I'm ready. Either online or physically, I'm ready. You can let me know. So in primary schools, you find that it's rare to see schools having computer labs, especially in African countries, or in the developing countries. So we're going to be conversing about the role of teaching children ICT at their young age. We're going to see if it is important, if it is helpful or not. As I've told you, I am teacher Emmanuel. Now, let us dive deep into the conversation of today. So, as I told you, we're going to talk about the role of ICT, teaching ICT to children at the early age when they are still young, specifically when they are at primary level. Anyways, in this developing world where ICT is reading most of everything, whatever you do, when you do not include ICT, then you are left behind. So in education, we have also started integrating ICT, ensuring that children grow up with that sense of using ICT tools. Okay. Let's talk about the key findings of the researcher review done in New Zealand and at the international level. We're going to talk about ICT versus young children. I am teacher Emmanuel. As always, some authors have expressed the view that computers or ICT use is not appropriate for young children's cognitive, physical, social, and emotional development. However, there is no clear evidence to support this claim, and this view has increasingly been replaced by the view that when used appropriately, ICT can be a useful tool for supporting young children's learning and development. So most authors note the need for practitioners to be aware of health and safety issues around children's use of ICT, and for these to be attended to in early childhood education center ICT policies and practices. So this includes attention to children's physical, ergonomic safety, being mindful against children exposure to inappropriate content, example like games, internet-based material of violent or sexual nature or containing undesirable gender or cultural stereotypes, And protection of children's privacy is also a focus in online environment, or when information is published on internet. You have to respect children's right. that. So studies suggest that ICT use can provide a context for collaboration and cooperation and positive running experience, between children or between children and adults. However, this will not necessarily happen if this will not necessarily happen of its own accord. Research indicates that practitioners must be conscious of the kinds of running interactions they would like to occur in the context of ICT use, including between adults and children or between children, and then adopt pedagogical strategies, unique opportunities from cultural and linguistically diverse backgrounds. So ICT provides a variety of ways for children to weave together words, pictures, and sounds, thereby providing a range of ways for children to communicate their ideas, thoughts, and feelings. So good software can allow children to engage in self-directed exploration and can be tailored to children's individual needs, and assistive or adaptive ICT can reduce barriers to participation of children with special physical or learning needs. So you get it clearly that practitioners, when I say practitioners, I'm just talking about teachers or school authorities. They have to filter and see what content is relevant to pupils, what should they watch, you know. That's where comes in putting computers or electronic tools in kids safety mode, where a child is only allowed to watch content that is at their level, at the relevant age. It has been viewed that when ICTs are used very well, they enhance learning of children. So let's see now how to use ICT in enhancing the early childhood learning environment. So literature which explores how ICT can enhance the learning environment in early childhood education suggests that the value ICT can add to young children's learning environment depends on the choices practitioners, teachers make about which tools to select and when and how to use these. And their understanding about how these tools can support children's learning, development, and play. That's how things should be. First of all, practitioners or teachers have to make sure that the tool they choose, how they use it, you know, it is what will determine if that tool is going to be effectively used for a young child or is going to impact the life of the child. Okay, and then practitioners need to be familiar with various tools and what they can do. They also need to be familiar with contemporary theories about learning and development and recognize how these can be linked to the use of ICT. New kinds of practices may be needed, for example, to support young children to develop information and communication literacies necessary for learning in ICT enriched environment, because you have to teach your child the skills of communicating, especially when they are online. If the children are conversing with others, you have to teach them to use kind language. That is clear, and I believe all practitioners or ICT teachers always keep that in mind. Anyways, the case studies show how early childhood education practitioners have used ICT to support a range of practices they believe to directly or indirectly support children's learning and development. These include directly supporting and scaffolding children's use of ICT, using ICT to document and assess children's learning and activities, using ICT to reflect on children and the educators' interactions in the early childhood education setting, using ICT to build curricula from children's interests, ideas, and experiences, and using ICT to strengthen and support family involvement in children's learning. So let's go further. Let's go further. And thank you, media. How are you doing? I'm surprised that you are following. God bless you. Uh, anyways, all right. Now let's continue talking about effective ICT professional development for early childhood educators. Okay, so without good guidance, examples, and support for their own professional learning, early childhood educators will make it, will make their own decisions about the nature and extent of ICT use in in children's learning. So these decisions are influenced by such factors as educators' own level of confidence with ICT and their beliefs about learning and teaching in the early childhood years. So, literature about ICT use in early childhood education settings and studies of early childhood teachers and teachers in training learning to use ICT suggested that effective professional development supports teachers to develop understandings of ICT that connect with their existing early childhood education philosophy and pedagogical views. So, effective professional development incorporates teachers' own aspirations, skills, knowledge, and understanding into the learning context. So it provides opportunities for teachers to learn and explore new ways of working in their own early childhood education setting and stimulates practitioners to reflect on their views and ideas about children's learning and development and to analyze and question how things are done in early childhood education and the learning of a child. So effective professional development emphasizes collaborative knowledge building and practitioners sharing their situated learning experiences with ICT with one another. It provides support networks to help practitioners to be active researchers in their own early childhood education setting and to assess current research and expertise in ICT. So, hello guys, thank you for watching. I can see person is just following. May I just invite some? All right. Anyways, without uh, wasting any minutes, let's just go ahead and talk about the use of ICT for administration and information management in early childhood education. Although computers and ICT are likely to be used in planning, administration, and information management, in many early childhood education settings, there is little research which specifically investigates this aspect of ICT as used in early childhood education. So ICT also presents opportunities for sharing and exchange of information between different services and and agencies involved in children's care and education. But it is difficult to locate examples of this in the literature. So some relevant messages can be drawn from international literature about computerization of systems for managing and sharing information about children who are looked after by social services. For example, the need for systems to make it easy to enter information and produce reports that save in administrative work. The need to establish common goals between ICT specialists, managers, and those who gather and input data. The need to establish common data exchange standards to allow for data transfer between systems. Individual early childhood education centers may be using a variety of business and education administration packages, and this may offer flexibility for individual centers to customize packages for their specific needs. However, it may also reduce the ease of communication and exchange of information between different systems and different locations. So I've told you that I've based it to the research views from New Zealand. New Zealand. You know. So today, let's take some time and talk about ICT access and the infrastructure in early childhood education settings. So let's take an example in New Zealand. So the individual New Zealand studies of ICT use in childhood education, and in 2003, so national surgery indicated that current ICT use in childhood education centers is variable, while some centers have begun to use ICT extensively to support children's learning. Other centers report little or no use of ICT by children or use of ICT to support children's learning. So access to computers and other ICT varies between different kinds of centers. So in general, kindergartens seem to be better equipped and resourced than play centers. So education and care centers seem to lie somewhere in between. Uh, There isn't sufficient data to comment on the adequacy of ICT access and resourcing in other kinds of early childhood education settings. So some New Zealand practitioners have identified need for a need for access to technical and advisory support in relation to ICT and particularly computer use. So one of the most common use of ICT in New Zealand early child education settings relates to documentation of children's learning. And over half of teachers surveyed in 2023 reported they had access to a digital camera in their center. Some early childhood education centers have used digital photography and other digital media to build up electronic or physical portfolios of children learning for assessment purposes and to share with children and their families. Just under half of center managers surveyed by NSCEL do not use a computer package for administrative purposes. Those who do not use a range of educational and business packages. So, yeah. So this was part one. So thank you very much for having watched this live show. We'll keep conversing about this. Thank you. Bye.